So Dr. Ratio releases in 2 days from now, and a lot of people obviously are very excited because he's completely free. A DPS imaginary character just given to us for free. Just so insane still thinking about it. But beyond that, a lot of people are talking about, is it worth for me to go ahead and summon for his light cone? And I do want to go ahead and discuss that today, talk about his own light cone, of course, what other options are available in case you're considering not going for his light cone, and whether or not I do recommend to go ahead and do the summons for it in total. So let's just really hop right into it with Dr. Ratio. So his own signature light cone here is the Baptism of Pure Thought here. So his light cone increases the wearer's crit damage by 20%. For every debuff on the enemy target, the wearer's crit damage dealt against this target increases by 8%, stacking up to 3 times. So that's 20% plus 24%. That's a total of 44% crit damage if you are able to have 3 or more debuffs, which again, the thing with Dr. Ratio is that you're gonna want to have debuffs on the enemy. You're gonna run him with, like, let's say Silver Wolf or Pela or anything like that, and it's right here again. He really wants these debuffs again. For every debuff on the target, he gets extra crit rate, crit damage. Right here, he has damage increases for every debuff the enemy has. Basically 30% to 50%, 10% per debuff. You have to have at least 3 or more, right? But still, and then this right here can go up to 50% crit damage, 25% crit rate. So very, very important that he wants debuffs. So obviously this makes a lot of sense for his own kits. If you're running up again Silver Wolf, Pela, right, you're able to get some debuffs on the enemy, and this will be a pretty easy thing to see. When using his ultimate to attack the enemy targets, the wearer receives the Disputation effect that does increase his damage dealt by 36%, and then his follow-up attacks ignore 24% of the target's defense, and that effect lasts for a total of 2 turns, which crazy, right? 24% defense ignoring is good on top of this, and then having up to 44% crit damage on top of this. The only thing for him is that his ultimate does cost, I believe, 140 energy, so maybe at times you're not always going to consistently get that off. You know, maybe if you're running him with, let's say, I think Tingyun, right? Tingyun could provide him the energy recovery, things like that. But other than that, I mean, this is really good for him. Really, really, really good light cone. And what do you expect? It is his own signature light cone that is designed to work specifically with him. And the thing with this guy is we want to keep in mind his follow-up attacks are very, very important. That's where a good crux of his damage is going to be coming from. Having this 270% imaginary damage dealt there. That's like most of his damage specifically. So you definitely want to go ahead and make sure that you are able to like have his follow-up attacks do damage, which is going to be important when we're talking about some of these other light cones. But this is his main one. We're going to go down the list and talk about the other ones. So next right here is the free-to-play Herda light cone, Cruising in the Stellar Sea. Increase the wearer's crit rate by 8% up to 16%, and increases their crit rate against enemies with HP less than or equal to 50% by an extra 8 to 16%. So in total, you can get up to a total of 16 to 32% crit rate here, which is nice because it's like you could have him with a pretty decent crit rate amount while still giving him like a crit damage, like, you know, build overall in terms of his relics, which could kind of round him out. And you could be like even getting up to, let's say, like 80 to 100% crit rate on this guy. And then obviously he has all the crit damage in his kit and everything like that, with, if you consider the relics, like a crit damage body, he's going to be able to do a lot of damage pretty consistently. Then when the wearer defeats an enemy, their attack is increased by 20 to 40% for 2 turns. And again, since this is a completely free light cone, you can get maxed out for free. I mean, you can get, again, the 32% crit rates and then 40% damage increase when he defeats an enemy, which obviously he's a DPS character. He hits super, super hard. It's going to be pretty common for you to go ahead and get that off. So as a free-to-play alternative, again, this is a pretty good option, I think, overall. And obviously it does help him out that it will also, again, work completely with his follow-up attacks. Here in the Knights, so this is the Seal signature Lyco. increases crit rate by 18%. While the wearer is in battle, for every 10 speed that exceeds 100, the damage of the wearer's basic attack and skill is increased by 6%. Then the crit damage of the ultimate is increased by 12%, and that effect can stack up to 6 times. Now, I don't like this on him. I think that this is like, you know, if you have to run it, it's like, you know, it's there. But it doesn't increase his follow-up damage. And I feel like, you know, again, it's like, since it doesn't do that, it's like, you know, I mean, again, at least the crit rate buff could be cool. And, you know, at least it does something. But, you know, it doesn't really fit what this guy wants to really aim to achieve. So I would say overall, just a no to this one, especially since this is a free option. Like, you definitely would just use this one over this one. So Sleep Like the Dead increases the wearer's crit damage by 30% when the wearer's basic attack or skill does not result in a crit. Increases the crit rate by 36% for the turn. One turn, I guess I should say. This effect can only trigger once every 3 turns. So I actually think this one, if we're like talking about like ranking these, this one is definitely probably a better option than this. I wouldn't say probably, it is a better option than this one, right? The basic attack or skill doesn't increase in a crit. Then the crit rate is increased by 36% for the turn, so obviously that will apply to his follow-up attack if the basic or skill does not result in a critical hit. And then obviously his crit damage here is increased right by 30%. So again, it'll really, like, you know, even if you're building this guy with more lean towards crit damage, where his basic or attack doesn't crit, because maybe his crit rate is a little like on the little lower-ish, he will get this nice 36% boost, which, you know, I could see that potentially, like, someone trying to make a build around this, if they really wanted. I wouldn't say it's like, I would say again, still probably prefer this one overall compared to this one, because like with this one you don't really have to, like, you know, kind of, I think, try to work around to get that right. You know, this is not going to be something you will always see. Well, I feel like these buffs, I feel like you'll see a lot, right? And only triggering once every 3 turns, right? It's like a decent option, but yeah, that's what I'd say. Now this one here, this is the Topaz Lycone, the Wearisome Blissful. Increase the wearer's crit rate by 18% and their follow-up attacks damage by 30%. After the wearer uses a follow-up attack, apply the tame state to the target. That does stack up to 2 stacks. Then when allies hit enemy targets under the tame state, every tame stack increases the crit damage dealt by 12%. So again, this actually does fit Dr. Ratio, I think, quite nicely. Obviously the crit rate damage, not the crit damage, I'm so silly. The crit rate increase of 18%, and then his follow-up attack damage is what I meant to say, by 30%, which does help quite a bit. And since he uses follow-up attacks, stacking up to twice with the tame state, that'll be supporting the whole team 24% crit damage, which is just good, right? I mean, this is overall a good Lycone. Dr. Ratio is going to be doing follow-up attacks, increasing his own damage, right? This is definitely something that works nicely for him and the teams that he'll be on. The only thing I would say with this is I think most people who summon for this Lycone probably summoned for Topaz as well, because this Lycone was like designed to be used on her, right? So I think there are definitely some people who might have summoned for this Lycone and don't have Topaz. And then it's a thing where, okay, I could put this one on Dr. Ratio, and I think that'll work out pretty well. Or maybe if you're not even going to run them on a team together. But I think a lot of people, will want to run them on the team together. They fit really, really well together overall, with her, you know, providing the follow-up attack damage to herself, and then giving the crit damage bonus and everything she does in her own kit. So yeah, I think that, again, this is like probably one of his better ones, near the top for sure. I mean, I'm not really ranking them specifically, but I think his own Lycone is like, if you want to really use Dr. Ratio to like his best, obviously his Lycone is going to be the best one. It's just so good, and I feel like it's not a situation where it's like, oh, maybe use him for like a different kind of purpose, because he's like very straightforward for what he wants to really do. There's not really other ways to like build him or like use him. It's like this guy is like damage, follow-up attack, hit hard, right? You know, I think it's just very, very basically putting him. So I think this is actually a worthy investment again, especially because of the fact you don't have to actually summon for him himself. Like, it's just the light cone. Maybe if it was a thing where it's like, okay, I have to summon for him and then I have to get his light cone, it's like, you know, kind of right. But I think having to summon for his light cone is not the worst thing in the world. But again, I know a lot of people are considering Kafka's coming out and returning for the first time. Black Swan, Sparkle's upcoming. So in the event that you really don't want to summon for the light cone, I think this one, Cruising in the Stellar Sea, works just fine, right? Even again, if you have the Topaz one, that works fine. And then Sleep Like the Dead, I wouldn't use Sails on him personally. I think there's a 4-star one that might be able to work, like most of these, not really. But this Swordplay one, for each time the wearer hits the same target, damage increases by 8% to 16%. That stacks up to 5 times. The only issue is that it is dispelled when the wearer changes targets. So I think a lot of fights have multiple enemies now. And the thing with this guy, it's like, again, doing a lot of damage, is that, you know, this might not really stack up too much unless you're only specifically targeting like the big box in the middle. Like, you can get this to work. I think you can get it to work, but I think that most of the 5-star options will just be overall more consistent for him and just better for Dr. Ratio, at least in my opinion. But we'll see when he's actually in game. Maybe as we test things, maybe that 4-star one could be interesting. That's the one I'm iffy on, so I don't want to say 100%. Maybe it'll be better than some of the like quote unquote like worse options for him in terms of the 5-star light cones. But yeah, I don't think it's a necessity, but it's something you really do want for Dr. Ratio, because again, he's a character that's like he's specific, like, how to explain it. He's designed to do a very certain thing, right? He's not really designed to do, like, you know, he could potentially do many other things or build many other ways. So that's why I think his light cone is important for him overall. And if you are a big Dr. Ratio fan, I would say it is a good choice to go ahead and summon for the light cone, especially again if he's going to be one of your like 2 main teams DPSs. I think this will be a really smart choice to go for, and you definitely will not regret it. But let me know if you guys are going to summon for his light cone, what your builds you're going to run for this guy. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.